this is a question we get very, very often. Who is eligible to claim a child in order to receive the child tax credit?
So, Missy, can I ask you a question?
Yes, absolutely.
This is all such great information, and it just makes me excited knowing that there's so many opportunities to have some resources that are much needed for families. My question is, if a family were to file late because they got an extension, they would still be eligible for these particular credits. Is that right? It's just it would come later. Is that how that works? Or
Yes, absolutely. As long as the family files an extension, and I believe it's an extension for 6 months. So I think it will take them to October 15th, I want to say.
okay,
As long as they file that extension with the IRS, they can still receive the CTC, of course.
great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jasmine. It's a great question. And so, yeah, so unfortunately, the tax code has very sort of rigid qualifying child rules. And so to be eligible for the CTC, a child must live with the person who's claiming the credit for at least half of the year, at least 6 months of the year, and be a child, a grandchild, a sibling, a niece, or nephew of the tax filer. And when we say child, that's inclusive of adoptive children or legal foster children. And so what we see and what we know is that children who may live with more distant relatives or family friends, kinship care, unfortunately, these children are not eligible to receive the CTC, or children who may not spend, 6 months of the year in a single household and may move around a bit more frequently than that. Unfortunately, those children are not eligible. If a child has split custody, then the parent who holds primary custody of the child will receive the CTC. And that's, again, given that the child lives with that caregiver for at least 6 months of the year. Now, sometimes we have cases where children split time equally between two parents, as part of a joint custody arrangement. And if that's the case, then whichever parent has a higher annual income may claim the child on their 2021 tax return to be able to receive the CTC payment.
Missy, if there's not a legal kind of a guidelines around sort of like who has custody, right? Let's just say that these parents have decided that they informally want to, they haven't gone to court, but they just are informally kind of splitting the children's time. Then it just defaults to like whoever has the child for a longer period of time, or how does that work? If there's nothing in black and white that says I have primary custody of this particular child, who gets this benefit?
Yeah, it's a great question, and my understanding is that it really comes down to whichever parent is claiming the child on their tax return. We hear that sometimes some parents with custody arrangements will sort of have an understanding of 1 year I claim the child, or the next year, sometimes parents alternate. My understanding is it's not as much based on sort of legal custody arrangements as which parent is claiming the child on their taxes.
Okay. And
yeah,
presumably, ideally, that both parents would have a conversation and say, hey, I'm going to be claiming this year, just so that there's not like a double, they're not both attempting to claim, and which I imagine sometimes happens.
Yeah, it does. It does sometimes happen. And there are sometimes cases where the parent who is the one who has, taken primary custody of a child, there is sort of a misunderstanding and another parent claims the child. on their tax return, and so that can get a bit dicey. And so yes, it's far from a perfect system, but yeah, really, like you said, sort of the easiest way to sort of mitigate and to prevent that from happening is yeah, the parents sort of coming to an agreement or an understanding at least of who is going to be claiming the child on their tax return.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. Will this benefit impact eligibility for other benefits or programs? That is a no. Fortunately, tax credits do not count against earned income. And so families who receive other federally funded benefit programs, Medicaid or SNAP, the child tax credit does not impact eligibility for those. So that is something families do not need to be concerned about. And this one, Jasmine had a intuition about. And so if, families for whatever reason need to file their taxes late, can they still receive the CTC? Yes, just as long as families file an extension with the IRS. And in our resources section at the end, we have a direct link to the form that families need to make sure that they complete to file that extension. And so this one I may be getting a bit repetitive on, but it's so important that I wanted to emphasize whether or not families who did not earn an income in 2021 should still file their taxes. That is a yes. We want to shout that from the rooftops that this year especially, all families should file their taxes, regardless of income, regardless of how frequently or infrequently they file. There's just a lot of great benefits on the table, a lot of great reasons to be doing so. Now, if families did not receive their third stimulus payment last year, or maybe received less than they should have, is it too late to receive those? Will filing their taxes help? And so individuals who maybe did not receive their third stimulus payment, which was $1,400 for each eligible adult and qualifying dependent, and that stimulus payment was awarded, you may remember, last year. It's not too late to do so if, when filing their 2021 tax return, individual notes that they have not received that credit, they can claim it as a recovery rebate credit and can still receive it. So in addition to a child tax credit payment, if there are families that you all work with, that or they may have mentioned that they did not receive that third stimulus payment last year, that's yet another really important reason to be filing their taxes. This comes up all the time. There are families, parents who adopted a child in 2021, who gave birth to a child, and did not receive the child tax credit this year. And the IRS had created an update portal for individuals to be able to update sort of big life changes, such as having a child, that happened last year. But unfortunately, many parents or guardians of babies born in 2021 just were not able to update their dependents using that portal, and so didn't receive the monthly payments that they were entitled to. And so these families especially must file their taxes. If y'all work with families that had a baby last year, And, for whatever reason, we're not able to update using that portal, did not receive a payment. Even if you just have, a family who had a baby last year and aren't sure if they were receiving payments, it's so important to check in with those families, especially.